Welcome to the September 18th City Council meeting. If you join me for a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please, Ms. Orlovsky.
Michelle Volk. Here. Luke Collier.
Here.
John Bermel.
Here.
Dan Wolter.
Here.
Joshua Lee.
Here. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for those who are here to address the council up to 3 minutes. If you have a comment, you can raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, additional agenda information. Mr. Miller.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right. We'll now move on to item 5, presentations, introductions, and the first is our Glenbrook Path Fire Awards, and I'll turn it over to our Fire Chief, Meyer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight we are going to recognize the selfless acts of 3 community members and their actions on the morning of March 28th, 2023. They are all neighbors of Melissa and Corey Young, and I would like to invite Melissa and Corey up front with me as they make their way up here. On the morning of March 28th, Ann Eicher was leaving her house when she saw the Young's house on fire and quickly made the call to 911. And then Matt Lang and Bart Weiss took action in gaining entry to the home to wake up and evacuate Melissa and Corey's 3 children along with Grandma Cheryl, who was watching them. Once they had everyone out of the house, they took them all to Bart and Brooke's house, where Brooke, Bart's wife, who was a nurse, started providing first aid and care for the children and Grandma Cheryl until the paramedics arrived. This event was a success due to the neighbors working as a team to provide the necessary actions to help one of their neighbors. And I'd like to have Corey, if you'd like to say a few words about kind of what he thought of everything.
Yeah, well, thank you, City Council members, Mayor. We you don't even know where to start and where to end to start thanking people, but due to the actions of my neighbors, the fire department, we're lucky enough to have these 3 girls and my mom still here. Thank you for your continued support. It's yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else, Melissa.
I think we're forever grateful for our neighbors, and we'll be continuing thanking them for the rest of our lives. But we also wanted to extend recognition and gratitude to Lakeville Fire Department, Police Department, paramedics, everyone that came to our home that day, and also recognize the city of, and thank the city of Lakeville for the contributed resources to prepare everyone that came to our house and goes to other houses. And we know that we were very fortunate, and we, our girls, we're a family of faith, and our girls, whenever they see emergency vehicle now, they say, please God, keep everyone safe, and we mean that for all of you as well as you're going in to help others.
At this time, if I could have Erin Eicher, and if her family wants to join her, come up. Corey, if you want to stay up here for a second. I'm not going to let you off that easy. I'd like you to provide them with their certification. So Ann was the one I mentioned. She was the one that was awake and moving out of her house when she saw the fire at home at Corey's house and made the first call to 911 to start everything into motion. And Ann is receiving a letter of commendation from the fire department. And as you can see, her husband behind her, Aaron, is also a firefighter on our department. So with that, you also get a challenge. Then Matt Lang, who is a neighbor, he was one of the ones that helped Bart as far as gain entry and evacuate the house, if he could come forward. And Matt is also receiving a letter of commendation for his actions that morning. And finally, Bart Weiss, who is a firefighter on our fire department, is receiving the Medal of Bravery for his actions as far as also helping. And kind of what I mentioned, and I don't want to be remiss, is that his wife and their family were caring for everybody while we were doing our work as far as putting out the house fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Council, any comments?
I can't even imagine what that circumstance felt like for you as a family and for everyone involved, neighbors. I'm seeing emotions out here in the audience. I think we're all very thankful that it ended up the way it did. And it's incredible to see everyone come together for the sake of their community. And we're sitting amongst heroes. So thank you so much for what you did to spring into action, and the fact that it breathes in amongst your family too. We've got firefighters, their spouses, their families. It's just breeding heroism throughout the family and the community. So thank you all. Thank you for the work that you always do in the department. And I'm just very grateful that this is where we're at, where we can thank them for the service and that nothing else more significant happened. So thank you all.
Just on behalf of the community, thank you again for your quick action to all of you, and for those of you that stepped in for our fire department. So thank you, and just echo what Joshua said. It's just really heartwarming to see everybody kind of coming together and looking out for neighbors. It's really important. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Can you give us a few seconds to exit?
Yes, absolutely. Unless you want to stay around.
We have a riveting meeting for them.
Yeah, gripping stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to item B, which is the proclamation for Manufacturing Month, which is October, and I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Tina Goodroad. Welcome.
Mayor, members of the council, this year the city of Lakeville is designating October as Manufacturing Month to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions that all of our manufacturing companies provide to the city through highly skilled labor, well-paying jobs, which significantly contributes to not only our own economy, but as well as the state's, with a high standard of living and economic vitality. We'll be celebrating our manufacturing companies at our annual reception. That'll be taking place at Brackett's Crossing on October 3rd. And I think this evening, Councilmember Volk will be reading the proclamation designating Manufacturing Month.
Okay. I have a proclamation for the 2023 Manufacturing Month. Whereas manufacturing is a dynamic and robust industry, crucial to the health and strength of Minnesota's diverse economy, and whereas the manufacturing industry contributed $58.7 billion to Minnesota's economy in 2022, representing a 13.2% contribution to the state's gross domestic product. And whereas workers took home $24.9 billion in wages from Minnesota manufacturing jobs in 2022, the second largest total payroll among private sector industries. And whereas manufacturing in Minnesota pays an average annual wage of $76,950, which is 10% higher than the state's overall average private sector wage. And whereas manufacturing provides 324,000 highly skilled, well-paying jobs, which significantly contribute to Minnesota's high standard of living and economic vitality. And whereas manufacturing and related businesses are one of the largest employment sectors in Lakeville and account for over 300 businesses and over 7,000 jobs in our community. Now, therefore, the Lakeville City Council does hereby proclaim that the month of October shall be observed as Manufacturing Month in the city of Lakeville, proclaimed this 18th day of September 2023. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hang on to that. Okay, moving on to item C, we have our Police Department quarterly report, and I'll turn it over to Chief Paulson. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, here tonight to present our quarterly report. And as you can see there, this highlights the months of May through July. And as is customary for us, I'll start out with the mission statement. The Lakeville Police Department exists to ensure an excellent quality of life in Lakeville by serving and protecting in a professional and innovative way. Some personnel updates, both some changes and additions here. The first slide is a Community Service Officer, Randy Smith. He's one of our 2 full-time CSOs. We did a little bit of a restructure in our CSO division. We received quite a bit of turnover there with seasonal employees and part-time employees that are a lot of college students. And one of the challenges we've had is onboarding, training, scheduling. And so creating a lead position with the CSOs will help to coordinate all of that each year as folks come and go, and Randy is serving well in that role, and he's officially been in that assignment since July. So some new hires, some additions. On the left, there's Officer Taylor Karstensen, and speaking of CSOs, he was a part-time CSO with us, but was promoted to a sworn officer earlier this year. He grew up in Lakeville, went to Farmington schools, attended the University of Minnesota Duluth, and also serves in the Army National Guard. In the middle, Officer Jason Key, born and raised in Red Wing, Minnesota, attended Alexandria Tech and St. Mary's University down in Winona. Jason was a deputy down in Goodhue County for a few years before joining us here in Lakeville. And then Officer Eric Schaefer on the right comes to us from Iowa. Attended Iowa State University and worked with the Ankeny, Iowa Police Department for 5 years. And Ankeny is a suburb of the Des Moines area, if you're not familiar. Both Officer Key and Officer Schaefer just finished field training, and today I think marks their first shift on their own. Those 2 coming in with several years of experience certainly was helpful in moving them a little bit more quickly through the field training process. Crime analyst on the left there, Nicole Clifton. So as you recall, that was a new position that we added in 2023. She was hired earlier this year. She comes to us from the Shakopee Police Department, where she was a crime prevention specialist for 5 years, and prior to that, she was with the Apple Valley Police Department. So she brings some good experience to that role, and as we create a new position there for her and new for our agency, it's been fun to see her put the work in and bring her experience. And then a couple more officers that started with us in July. In the middle there, Officer Mindy Bravo, born and raised in Northfield, went down to school at Riverland Community College in Austin, and is fluent in Spanish, which is certainly a helpful skill to bring to the department. And on the right, another prior part-time CSO, Nick Pilak. He grew up in the Sartell area and was going down the electrician path before transitioning over to law enforcement, which we're thankful for. Went to Inver Grove Community College and Minnesota State Mankato for his education. So those 2 are still in field training. It's about a 16-week program, give or take, depending on some experience and exposure to calls, things like that. Some happenings and events that we've been a part of over the last few months. May to July on the left there, Dunkin' Donuts Cop on a Rooftop. That's an event where we partner with the Special Olympics in Minnesota. Set up a little booth there, as you can see, and help hand out coupons for coffee and donuts, raise some awareness and help generate funds and donations for the Special Olympics. Always a fun event to be a part of. And there were a few folks up on the roof waving people in. Unfortunately, no crashes to report. It's a pretty busy intersection up there on County Road 46. So. And on the right there, an event that we tried again this year after several years of not having this, an open house at the police department, where we opened up our doors and brought in a lot of equipment and programs to help show off. We didn't know exactly what to expect, but we had an outstanding turnout. The date there, May 27th, it was Memorial Day weekend, so a holiday weekend. We weren't exactly sure how that would play out, but our unofficial head count was over 1,000 people attending, and it included tours of the building, displays of, like I said, equipment and some programs, food, some raffle prizes that were donated by the Public Safety Foundation. A couple of the pictures there, kids that submitted their names for the bike raffles, the officers then surprised them and and made the bike deliveries in the days after the open house, which was pretty fun for our staff to get to do. Some excited kids. Back to some Special Olympics partnerships there on the left, an event we've done a number of times, the Torch Run, which was in June. Another hot day, it seems like it always is. But we kick off the southeast metro leg of the Torch Run, and we go a little over 3.5 miles up to Burnsville, Crystal Lake Beach, where we pass the torch off to them, and then they continue it on from there. But to date in Minnesota alone, I think Special Olympics, the note there is $46 million raised just from the Torch Run. So it's a great event. It's been going on a long time, and it's fun to be a part of that. And then on the right, our community engagement team held a Lakeville PD Family Movie Night. Again, that's another new event that we tried out. Took place in June on the turf outside of Lakeville North High School. And another hot evening, which is a theme this summer, but a good turnout, a lot of kids and young families for our officers to interact with and see a movie together. And of course, another successful Pana Prague is in the books. Our staff, as well as many other employees in the city and city departments, participated and put a lot of work into making sure it was enjoyable and safe events. A couple events highlighted there, of course, the parade on the left, and then our canine demonstration on the right. That's gotten to be bigger and bigger over the years and more well attended. It takes place usually the Thursday of Pana Prague week up at Steve Michaud Park, where our 2 canine handlers join up with some neighboring agencies who bring their canines and put on a little demonstration, show a little bit about what the dogs can do, and answer some questions, and then afterwards have a chance to interact with both the handlers and the dogs. And then on the right, Custard with a Cop, another new initiative with our community engagement team. This one was up at the Queen Anne Mobile Home Community in July. The advertisement was kind of pushed out through their management staff, so it was mostly the residents of Queen Anne. But we set up a little pop-up tent there with some custard on a hot day, and again had some drawings for some raffle prizes, and had a chance to connect with those residents. A new initiative that we partnered with some of the automakers, auto manufacturers. Most of you are probably well aware of the thefts involving Hyundai and Kia specifically. So those automakers have pushed out steering wheel locks, where we partner with them to take custody of those and then distribute them to folks in our community. So there are some specifics on model years and vehicle types there that people have to qualify for these that they work with. But I think to date, just checking today, we've handed out a little over 100, about 111, I think was the final number that we're at. We still have some left, so if people still are interested, we have those available. We can hook them up, but it's been a pretty successful outreach program. Just a few training bullets from May through July there. The active shooter that's on the top, that was a scenario event that we did up at the Burnsville Mall, which was really nice for us to be able to get in there. It's kind of unique for us to be able to train in a building like that. We found a period of time that they were able to open that up to us to do some scenarios with role players and simunitions, things like that. So it's about as real world as we can make it, and it's just a good chance for us to do some high quality training. And then down a few bullet points down there, you'll see less lethal instruction and firearms instructor school. That's a trend we're trying to put more people through instructor type training so that we can turn around and train in-house a lot more than sending our staff to other places to be trained. As we continue to grow, it's just been more efficient for us to train a few instructors and put the rest of our staff through that way. Our peer support annual training, that's our internal group of peers, as the name suggests, that offer support both for work-related and non-work-related events in people's lives. It's been very well utilized and successful, and you can see the numbers there. We have 13 sworn and 1 non-sworn staff member a part of that team. And then a couple of conferences to highlight the Association of Women's Police. We sent a couple of officers, one of those, Haley Springer's on the board of that association, and then our 3 SROs, school resource officers, went up to the Juvenile Officers Association conference. Into a few statistical slides, to slow down there. So these are case files, and again, these are incidents in which a police report was generated, so generally a little bit more to the call than just a routine type of traffic stop or something like that. So broken down by quarter there up on top, we're about 200 more May through July this year over last year, and then year to date on the bottom, again, about 200 more. So a little bit busier summer here than last year, for sure. And then calls for service, so these are all calls that we respond to or initiate. Up on top there, you'll see year-to-date, January through the end of July, we're up about 5,000 through the first 7 months of this year. And a couple of the categories that we've been highlighting here at Council over the last couple of years are mental health-related calls, welfare check, and crisis mental health are both up and pretty consistent with the growth that we're seeing from a population standpoint. Traffic stops and accidents, as everybody knows that's been through town, we have plenty of traffic, busy roads, construction projects, things like that. Summer's a good time for us to get out there and be a little bit more, do some more enforcement waves than other times of year, so you can see some numbers that reflect that there. Our traffic stops are up by about 1,300 year to year, 2023 to 2022, holding pretty steady on the property damage crashes, and then an increase in personal injury. And personal injury is when anyone involved in the crash, driver, pedestrian, or occupant of the vehicle reports any type of injury. And some of the crime offenses that we report, just a couple to kind of highlight here. The DUI offenses are up quite a bit, 2023 to 2022. Those kind of correlate to the increase in traffic stops. And then motor vehicle theft, we talk about the steering wheel locks. We've actually seen about half as many this year as we did last year through July. So that's a good trend to look at there. The other ones are holding pretty steady. Sex offenses really are hard to, there's not really ever a pattern to those. They kind of spike and drop just based on a variety of circumstances that just aren't really pattern specific. And then just a comparison of our calls to some of our neighboring agency. These calls for service vary a little bit from an earlier slide. These are billable calls through Dakota 911, so that number's a little bit lower than total calls. But we're right in line there with Burnsville, as you can see, and about 8,000 calls ahead of Apple Valley. And finally, just a kind of a nice citizen comment. One of our neighborhoods, a group of kids was putting together actually a pretty significant lemonade stand, as you can see there. Some work that went into that. They sent out a note, an invite for our officers, and the timing was perfect with a few officers in training and overlap in some shifts there where we were able to send a pretty good group up there to show up and support the lemonade stand. And the parent of one of the kids involved sent a very nice note, and they donated all of the funds to St. Jude, so it all went to a really good cause. And you can see the mayor pictured way in the back there as well, so happy to have him support it. But with that, I will stand for any questions.
Council, questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Michelle.
So I just wanted to thank you for always kind of giving that synopsis of the police calls, et cetera. And I think it's, and I believe you also print it in the local paper, am I correct?
So we put out a blotter on Facebook weekly that kind of highlights some calls, and the paper generally pulls from that and does something pretty similar to what's on our Facebook page.
Well, it's helpful because I never thought I'd see the day where somebody actually, no offense to this person, but actually let somebody else remote access into their computer. So I just thought, of all the scams in the world, I can't believe that we can be talked into that. So by putting that out there, by exposing myself and others in the public about some of these things that are taking place, at least it gives us pause to think, okay, now when things are popping up on our computer, don't necessarily respond and allow those kinds of things to happen. So thank you. I mean, it's a great service that you're doing I realize that sometimes that community members get a little nervous about some of the thefts that they see reported, et cetera, but they do need to be diligent about sometimes it's a trend and it might be coming to their neighborhood. So you're doing a great service by putting that out there to the public of some of these calls. So thank you.
It's good to hear, and thank you for recognizing that. Our goal isn't to victim shame or anything like that. We truly hope people can learn from maybe some of the mishaps of others and prevent some of the future crimes from occurring. So that's the goal. I'm glad that that's the way it's received. So that's good to hear.
Thank you.
And anybody else? I just want to say I've had a lot of really positive feedback and all the community engagement you guys have taken on this summer and spring. So I just want to extend that I've had really good positive feedback. So thanks again for taking some of those on this year. So
Good to hear, and I think our officers enjoy it just as much as the public, so
Good.
it's fun to do.
very good.
Thank
you. Okay, thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on to item 6, the consent agenda. Any items to highlight there, Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one tonight. 6O is a resolution of support for the 2024-2028 Dakota County Capital Improvement Program. This is something they ask us to do every year, and it's just a way to show our coordination and cooperation with them as we coordinate projects across the city.
Okay, very good. Council, any items on here for further discussion? Yeah, John?
I'd like to pull 6I.
6I, okay. Any other items? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda except for item I.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Consent agenda except for I is pulled. And I will now turn it over to Councilmember Bermel. If you wanted to highlight that, or if you maybe want staff to weigh in on the issue, let me.
No,
Okay.
I just, a point of clarification for that one. As you read through it, it's talking about write-in votes. And I just want to make a clarification that adoption of the resolution doesn't mean write-in votes won't be counted. Write-in votes will be counted, every one of them. What it means is they won't necessarily be recorded unless they reach a certain threshold set forth in the state. So I just really wanted to pull it just to clarify that we will still be counting those votes. They just may not end up recorded.
Well, and the way so maybe you can just clarify this for the public. The way I read it too is that the only way that it would be recorded was if the vote count for a write-in was higher than the vote counts, the candidate vote counts, correct?
Correct.
So basically what you're establishing is a winner based on a write-in campaign.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so we will no longer have to count Mickey Mouse and all the
Count, we
random
won't need to
one-off,
identify who each person is. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
And that's going to go for all of them?
Unless the total number of write-ins exceeds the lowest vote getter on the ballot.
Right.
Oh, the lowest vote getter. So not the write-in doesn't necessarily have to be the winner. The lowest vote getter could have 300 votes and the write-ins could be 500, and then you'd have to record them.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, other questions or comments about that? This is based on a change in state law that we had to just make a change, so. Okay, I'll take a motion then to approve this change.
So moved.
You gotta read it. Yep, Joshua.
Approve a resolution to tabulate write-in only if write-in votes are greater than a candidate's total votes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I'm just gonna take a voice vote. This. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Prevails. Okay, moving on to item 7, the rental registration ordinance, and I'll turn this back again to our development director, Tina Goodroad.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The City Council reviewed options for rental licensing or rental registration and directed staff to proceed with rental registration ordinance. So an amendment was prepared to Title IX of the Lakeville City Code to add a new Chapter 9 relating to rental registration. So this is the same ordinance that we reviewed and talked about at your last work session. The ordinance explains the purpose and provides for definitions, and then it explains, goes through, it applies to all residential units that are rental as defined by the ordinance, but there are a few exceptions. Those would include licensed facilities, hotels or motels, or a home that is where a room may be rented, but the owner-occupied dwelling unit. So each residential rental property must appoint a manager. However, that can be the property owner. The ordinance describes the information that will be collected through the registration process, and we'll create an online tool to make that easy and accessible. That'll include the basic information as to who the rental manager will be, who the owner is, so we have that contact information and can create that database. And then finally, we'll ask a few questions. These won't be mandatory, but it's just for us to solicit information and to be able to help provide more education. So we'll be asking whether or not a background check was being conducted for tenants 18 years and older, whether or not a written lease is being used, and whether or not the crime-free, drug-free multi-housing lease is being used, or that addendum is being used. So once this is in place, we have 90 days for it to really be in effect. So during that 90 days, we'll be collecting data, putting together a list of who we believe are all the rental properties. I'm sure we're going to be missing some. We'll have some articles out there, website information, social media information to try and educate the community about this change and then what the requirements are for the registration. And again, we want to make this easy and user-friendly, so we'll use an online form to collect that registration data. And then finally, we'd like to also use this as an opportunity to educate and provide resources. If people aren't using a written lease, send them to a location, a website that can offer that kind of assistance, help educate people on what the drug-free, crime-free lease addendum is all about. And then also provide resources for our renters. If they're feel they're being treated unfairly, what kind of resources are there for them? So it's another way to kind of advocate for that kind of education. So that is in a nutshell the ordinance, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Okay, council, questions or comments?
No questions, just a comment. I support this. I think it's a good way for us to take stock of the rental properties in our community. Some of them are obvious when you have multi-housing, but there are a number of them that are embedded in our single-family neighborhoods. And it'll be good to just have an understanding of what the rental property situation is in town. It also gives us the tools, from what I hear from the report, to have a relational presence and to do some educational work with the people that own these buildings or own these properties, and for the people that live in them too. And then finally, it does provide a level of accountability for people who may choose to purchase a property in town and just be an absentee landlord and not really take any stake in what impact their property may be having in the community. So I support this.
Other comments? Dan?
I've got a question first and then a comment. So the exemption for an owner-occupied dwelling unit, if an owner owns a duplex and rents out the other side, they still have to register the rental side? It's the unit and not the, okay. I have received some feedback, at least from one landlord who was concerned about the ordinance. But the more I talked through it with him, it seems like the concern is less about the ordinance and more about a slippery slope. The concern being that this is going to be the first step to a Minneapolis-style licensure system. He sent me the statement that he gets from Minneapolis, and it's a whole list of costs and expenses. And I own rental property in Iowa and in a city down there. And I know every 18 months I've got to pay to have an inspector come in, and then I got to pay him to come back and see that I turned repaired a banister and that sort of thing. And I assured him that that's not what we're passing tonight. I don't think that's the intent of anyone. And I'm not speaking for the county. I know that's not my intent to go down that path. I don't want to repeat what Councilmember Bermel said, but I think that's exactly right. This is about getting our arms around what we have for rental units in the city and having a degree of accountability. And finally, I want to just give a shout out to Councilmember Bermel. I know this has been an issue important to him, and it's the first issue that I know we discussed back in a number of months ago. So I just appreciate your leadership on this issue, and I'll be voting yes.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Just a question. And this thought just came into mind, but would we be using this as a resource for our public safety persons when they make calls, et cetera, to a rental property, that they would now have better knowledge of who actually owns the property? And would that then in turn help them to notify the owner of the property that they might have an issue with who they're renting to?
Let the chief answer that on his side of the table, but I do think this would be a resource to help cross departments, if there is a situation, be able to reach out to a property owner or to a renter manager if a situation arises.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's more of a source of information. So if we have a problem property or an issue at a property, I mean, it could be a water leak, could be anything that's related to trying to, locate who's responsible for that home. We would have a point of contact that has taken stock in that property, either the owner or I think it's the rental manager that has to be declared as well as part of this process, someone that's maybe more local or on-site if it's a non-resident owner. So I think it can be used as a tool.
Well, and the other reason I just thought of this is because this is in a different city, but a neighboring property to one of my children, they lease out the property, the home, and there's been quite a few calls for domestic violence. Would we be notifying the property manager of this type of incidents taking place?
Well, that's going to depend a little bit on call type. You brought up domestic violence. Some of those are pretty sensitive areas where we're not able to share some of that data with someone. It's more problems with, I would say, the property itself rather than
Physical.
tenants. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if we have, just a couple things that pop in my head are some ordinance issues with lawn care, junk vehicles, things like that. If we have problems like that, that would be probably a more likely avenue to reach out to an owner than calls for service with like assaults and things like that.
Thank you. I know that was extreme, but it was just something that recently came up in her neighborhood, so.
Thank you.
If there's not any further conversation, I'll take a motion. Yep, John.
I move to adopt an ordinance amendment to Title IX of the City Code.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Volk,
Aye.
Hellier,
Aye.
Bermel,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye. All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to items 8 and 9, unfinished and new business. Okay, seeing none. Our announcements, our next regular meeting is October 2nd here at City Council or City Hall. And our next work session is next Monday, September 25th at the water treatment facility on the corner of 185th and Ipava. And I will now take a motion to adjourn into our Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this council meeting.
All those in favor, or excuse me, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned into the HRA, and I will turn the gavel over to Councilmember Lee.
Here we go.
Thank you.